Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we're going to make a Thanksgiving skirt. Since this skirt has a half elastic waistband, it's going to fit you no matter how much you eat on Thanksgiving, which I think is the greatest. So it'll look great and be comfortable at the same time. So if you're ready to learn how to make this skirt, then let's get started. For my measurements, I'm going to make a 34-inch waist and a 17-inch length. For my waist, I'm going to divide that in two, which will give me 17 inches. I'm going to add 1 inch to the waistband piece, which will give me 18 inches, and I'm going to subtract 1 inch for the elastic piece, which is going to give me 16 inches. For my skirt length, I'm going to measure from where I want it to sit on my waist down to where I want the hem to be. So if I want a 17-inch skirt, all I'm going to do is subtract 0.25 inches to give me 16.75 inches, and that will be the length I'm going to cut out. We're going to start off with our fabric folded in half. The fabric that I'm using is about 44 inches wide. I'm going to need 2 rectangles cut at the 16.75 inch length. For the waistband, I'm going to cut out 2 5-inch strips. So one will be for my back waistband and one will be for the front. I'm going to cut my front waistband to the 18 inches I calculated in the beginning. For the interfacing, I'm going to cut out a couple 3.25 inch strips. I'm going to grab my elastic and I'm going to cut out one 16-inch piece. For waist measurements that are 38 inches and up, you're going to want to cut out an extra rectangle piece and an extra back waistband piece. This way you have enough fabric to give you the same amount of gathers. At this point, with the 38 and up waist measurement, you're going to sew both of your back waistband pieces together with a 5/16 seam allowance. Go ahead and iron the seam open. So you should have one really long waistband. Iron out your waistband and you're going to fold the edges over 3/8 inches on both sides. Do this to your back waistband piece and your front waistband piece. We're going to sew these sides down with a 1/8 inch seam allowance. We're going to fold over another 3/8 inches on both sides of each waistband. We're only going to sew one side of each waistband. You're going to determine what the top side of your print is, and this is going to be the side that you sew down. So if I fold my waistband in half, the side that I'm sewing should be the side on the bottom. If it's a repeating pattern, it really doesn't matter. We're going to sew this with a 5/16 inch seam allowance, or line it up to the edge of your presser foot. You're going to do this to both the front and back waistband. We're going to iron both of our waistband pieces in half so it gives a nice fold. Start with your front waistband piece and we're going to add our interfacing strips. This is going to help keep your waistband flat and keep its shape. Go ahead and iron down your interfacing, then re-iron your fold. We're going to fold over both edges 3/8 inches and iron them down. Then fold your waistband back in half and iron this down to keep those small folds in place. So you should have something that looks like this. We're going to grab our skirt body pieces and we're going to serge off the short sides of our rectangles to make sure they don't fray. If you don't have a serger, you can do a zigzag stitch or use a fray check. To get that center crease out of your skirt, I like to use the Best Press spray, and this stuff magically takes out those hard to iron out creases. This is a good time to iron out your skirt body pieces because once you put all your gathers in, it's a little hard to iron it out. We're going to start with one of your rectangles and you're going to determine which side is going to be the top. That's the side we're going to add our back waistband piece to. Open up your waistband and line it up with the top edge of the hem that you made on the waistband. Then carefully fold your waistband back over and we're going to pin this down. I just check and make sure that it's all lined up as I go, starting from the middle, working my way out. Then we're going to grab our second skirt piece, making sure that you determine which side is up, and you're going to lay this face down so both pretty sides are together. Line up your ends and pin those together. And we're going to sew this with a 5/16 inch seam allowance. Or once again, you can line it up with the edge of your presser foot. Iron your seams open. For 38 inches and up, you're going to sew all 3 main body skirt rectangles together first. Iron all 3 seams open. You're going to lay out your skirt body nice and even, having one of the seams in the middle. Line up the seam with your back waistband piece, and you're going to cut it to the length of your rectangle, adding about a 1/2 inch on each end. Then, keeping the seams aligned, you can go ahead and pin your waistband to the top edge of your skirt. After this point, you can follow the same steps to making the skirt. And now we're going to sew down our waistband with a 1/8 inch seam allowance. At this point, we're going to add a base stitch or your longest stitch so that we can gather the front portion of our skirt. Make sure to leave about a 3 or 4 inch tail of thread before you start sewing. You're going to sew a 5/16 inch seam allowance or line it up with the edge of your presser foot. Make sure you don't sew your waistband ends. Once you're at the end, make sure to leave another 3 to 4 inch tail of thread. Grab your elastic and we're going to fold over the corner on one end. We're going to sew this down so that it makes a little tiny pocket. We're going to start with one end of our waistband, and I'm just using a normal chopstick. I'm going to insert it into that little pocket. This is going to help me push my elastic through very easily. Make sure to safety pin down one end so it doesn't get lost inside. Push the elastic through, and then you can take out the chopstick and you're going to take out the seam that you made in your elastic. And then we can sew these ends down. I'm going to line up my stitch to where the seam is on my skirt. You want your elastic to be about 0.25 inches before the seam. And I'm just backstitching about 3 times so that the elastic is secure and the thread won't come undone after a couple wears. Do this to the other end as well. We're going to now gather the front of our skirt. You're going to hold on to the top thread and gently pull. This will automatically start gathering your skirt. You can just slide the gathers down and you're going to keep pulling until the front piece is just as gathered as your back. Once it's the same, I'm going to tie down one side. I usually put about 8 or 9 knots just so the thread doesn't come undone. We're going to grab our front waistband piece, and I'm lining up the inside edge that I folded over with the seam I made to hold down the elastic. Try to make it straight and even, and then you're going to pin this down. Do the same to the other side. At this point, you can also cut off any extra of the waistband, leaving about a 1/4 inch of hangover. I'm pulling the elastic to line up with the waistband so I can see if I need to gather the front a little more or loosen it a bit. You want to make sure that the front gathers are as even as you can get it with the back. And then go ahead and tie off the other end as well so that your skirt won't ungather while you adjust them. Go ahead and space out your gathers as best as you can. We're going to tuck this into the front waistband, and what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get the thread from my gathers to be about a 1/4 inch into my waistband. That way, with the seam allowance that I use to sew down my waistband, if I lift the edge, I still won't be able to see the thread. I'm really hoping I make sense right now. Take your time pinning because it really helps when you start to sew. And we're going to sew down one side all the way across and back up the other end. We're going to be sewing this with a 1/8 inch seam allowance. When you sew down one end, you're just going to lift your foot, pivot your skirt and line it up, lay your foot down and continue. As I sew, I'm just making sure the thread from my gathers is tucked in as far as I want it. You really want to go slow and take your time doing this part. This is going to be the hardest part of the whole skirt, but if you can do it, it definitely gives a really nice result. Once you get to the other end, lift your presser foot, pivot your skirt, lower your presser foot, and continue to the end. I accidentally forgot to press record when I started the hem of my skirt, but we're basically doing the hem how we did with our waistband. You're going to fold over the edge 3/8 inches, and we're going to sew this with a 1/8 inch seam allowance. So it should look something like this. Then you're going to fold over and iron another 3/8 inches all the way around. We're going to add the lace, so you're going to open up the fold you just ironed, and we're going to line up the edge of the lace to the edge of the hem. If you don't want to add lace, go ahead and skip this part and just sew down the hem once more. I like to start at one of the side seams, and you're going to leave about 1 inch of extra lace hanging over. Sew it down with a 1/8 inch seam allowance. When you get toward the end, line up the edges of your lace, cut off the excess. You're just going to roll the ends of the lace down. Then you can go ahead and sew right over that, so it gives a nice finish to your trim by hiding the ugly edges of your lace that you had cut. We're going to fold our hem back up and we're going to sew this down with a 5/16 inch seam allowance, or once again lining it up with the edge of your presser foot. And you are finished. I am really in love with this fabric just because it's got so much color, but yet it's still fall. I hope I was able to touch all bases so that you can make this skirt in any size. If you have any questions, please leave a comment and I will try to answer it as best as I can. This skirt is great because it has a half elastic waistband, so it's a little more forgiving than cutting a skirt to exactly your waist. If it's a little too big or a little too small, it should still kind of fit you. So I hope to see you all in the next one, and thank you so much for watching. Until next time, bye!